Okay, Erev Tov, we are live here in Bet Knesset. Yes, normally I give this shiur from home, but I am in Bet Knesset in front of a group of people. And, our Rosh Chodesh shiur tonight also coincides with our Kosher Curiosities class on Thursday night. So it's good to have people here in front of me, physically, rather than me staring at a window. And all of you online, Bezrat Hashem, thank you again for joining us. Chodesh Tov, tonight is Rosh Chodesh Cheshvan. And this is our fourth installment of the Kosher Curiosities series, where we look at kashrut issues. And there's so much to talk about. It's been great. Baruch Hashem, a lot of people going on YouTube and listening to the classes. I've got a lot of positive feedback. And now we're going to start getting into the meat of things. And already, in preface to the class, I had some of the young men in front of me arguing about tonight's topic, Halav Yisrael. What is the story? Is it a gimmick? Is it something that was made up? Is it something that I need to follow or I don't need to follow? It is certainly an idea, a concept that you hear a lot about in the Jewish world when you go shopping or when you are catering food or when you're at a wedding. This term Halav Yisrael comes up a lot. And that, along with Pat Yisrael and Bishul Yisrael, which are all concepts that we're going to get throughout this series, Emir Tzeh Hashem, and we invite our people listening online and the people here to please stay along and follow the class, and hopefully we will get to those subjects, Emir Tzeh Hashem, in the near future. So tonight's class again is going to be on Halav Yisrael. That is tonight's topic, and as we did in previous weeks, we are learning from the Sefer Peninei Halacha, written by Rav Eliezer Melamed Shlita, big Gaon in Eretz Yisrael. So, like he normally does in all of his halachot, he takes us back to the beginning, the source of things, and then he kind of breaks it down. So, the concept of halav is going to be broken up into two shiurim. Tonight is shiur number 1, and I invite you again for shiur number 2, online only, where we're going to speak about cheeses. Okay, so cheeses is a separate subject, so you're going to have to wait, Bezrat Hashem, another week till we talk about that. But that's a little hint of to what's going to be. So let's start. Let's look what he has to say. Kashrut halav, the concept of kashrut with regards to milk. Halav tahor hu halav shenechlav mi behema o mechaya tehora. So if you want to know what kosher milk is, the definition of kosher milk is milk that has been milked from a kosher animal or from a chaya tehora or from a undomesticated kosher animal. Hainu mimine behemot vechayot shebesaran kasher le'achila. An animal that you would be allowed to eat from, such as a cow, kedugmat para, or a goat, any milk that comes from them would be considered kosher milk. V'chalav tameh, what would be non-kosher milk or impure milk? Hu chalav shenechla mi behema o chaya tameh, a non-kosher animal, shebesaran asur ba'achila, which its meat you would not be allowed to eat from. And he gives some examples here. Aton is a female donkey. Na'aka is a female camel. Asusa, female horse, the chazira, or a female pig. All of these female non-kosher animals produce milk. That milk would be teme'ah, it would be not kosher. Ze'akla, this is the rule brought down in Gemara, Masechet Bechorot, the Mishnah. Hayotze mina tameh tameh. Anything that comes out of something impure is impure. Ve'ayotze mina tahor tahor. And anything that comes out of something pure is pure. Shnei hevdelim yeshnam ben chalav tahor letameh. There are two differences between what is called kosher milk, classified as kosher milk, and non-kosher milk. Aleph, number 1, hatahor yachol lehitkaben lagvina. Kosher milk is able to be curdled into cheese. Okay? You cannot make cheese out of non-kosher milk. That's fact. Try it. Can't be done. Okay? Ve'ilu atameh eno mitkaben. Again, milk that is tameh cannot be curdled into cheese. That's difference number 1. Number 2, bet. Seva'o shel hachalav tahor, the color of kosher milk, lavan, is whitish. Ve'shel atameh tze'avhav. And that of non-kosher milk has a yellowish tint to it. It's more yellow than white. So that's brought down in the Gemara Masechet Avodah Zarah. Gam k'shehachalav tahor, even though you have kosher milk, adayin yitachen shehi asur. It could still possibly turn into something that is non-kosher. She'im nechlav mi behema trefa, harehu asur b'achila. If you milked a cow, kosher animal, but that cow was considered a terefa, which is not allowed to be eaten, that milk that came out of the trefa is not kosher. Even though cow is kosher, but the milk that comes out of a trefa is not kosher. What is a trefa? Trefa hi behema sheniftzea be'ofan shelo techaye yoter miyud bet chodesh. A trefa is an animal that has an injury, a mum, a blemish, that because of that blemish would not be able to survive 12 months. Even though the animal itself is kosher. You have a cow, but it has a blemish in its internal organs that would not be able to survive. Doesn't even have to be internal organs. It could be sometimes a puncture in the body that won't be able to survive. That's a trefa. And if you were to pull out milk from that cow, it would not be kasher. Or if it has some other injury that would lead to its death within 12 months. Even though you might slaughter that animal, kosher animal, before it's dead, but I slaughter the animal and the animal is kasher, besara asu b'achila. I'm not allowed to eat that food because it is considered a trefa. Vehoilu besara asur b'achila. Since I'm not allowed to eat the food, gam hachalav shela asur b'achila. So too the milk from this animal cannot be drunk. Behema terefa shenitareva bebemot ksherot. What happens if I have a cow? Kosher, but it's a trefa. Remember, it has an injury that will probably lead to its death, and it got mixed up with a whole bunch of other cows, good cows, kosher cows, and I don't know which one is the bad cow. And what did I do? I started milking all my cows. One of them is a trefa. The halacha says in Shulchan Aruch, if there were 60 times more cows than the trefa, chalav trefa batel b'shishim, then the milk that came out of the non-good cow is nullified in 60, as this is a rule that we will speak about later on with all types of things that are isur. V'chol hachelev shecholvim me'eder kasher, ve'im lo hayu pishishim kol hachalav asur. All right, and all the chalav that was milked with that in that group is kosher. But if there was not 60 times, meaning 60 good animals versus the one, then it would not be kosher. Chelbo para ulachar miken shechato ota v'itparesh shehi trefa. Now, what happens? Again, this is all introduction. We're going to get to Halav Yisrael, I promise. What happens if a person milked a cow because he thought the cow was good? Then he slaughtered the cow and he realized, oh no, there's a puncture in the lung, a very bad mum, and this cow is a trefa. Keshem shebesara asu b'achila. So the halacha says I'm not allowed to eat the cow. So again, because I can't eat the cow, gam halav shechalbu mimena asur b'achila. So too, the cow cannot be the milk of the cow cannot be eaten. Vegam hagvina she'asu mimena asura b'achila. So too, any cheese that is made from that milk also can't be eaten. Aval. But if there's even a small chance that the pegam, the mum, the blemish that happened to that animal took place after the shechita, okay, therefore we can still eat the cheese that is curdled from that milk. As long as there is no chance that at the time you milked the cow was a trefa, hachalav shela becheskat kasher. The chalav has a status of kosher. Last point he says over here in the introduction, if you have an animal that became a trefa as a result of a punctured lung, the milk that is drawn from that animal for the first 3 days is close to shchita is asur. But any milk that was taken beforehand, mutar machmat safek sveka. So again, let's say you slaughter an animal on Thursday, okay, and you notice that this animal is a trefa. It's a trefa. It's not kosher. If you milk this from this cow for the last 2 weeks, okay, what's the status of that milk from the 2 weeks before? So what we're saying now here, the milk that you milked the 3 days prior, that is not good. But anything before 3 days prior to the shechita, that is okay because of a double safek, a double doubt. Number one, safek ulay asircha notzra la'achar chalivat hachalav. Maybe that the puncture came after you milked the cow. And the safek, the second, is ulay sircha zu ena matrifa. Maybe this puncture is not enough to be matrif the animal, to make the animal invalid. Okay, so these are some basic laws brought down in the Mishnayot. His second part is now going to get into the idea of Halav Nochrim, which is milk of the non-Jews. Asru Chachamim, the rabbis prohibited leIsrael le'echol Halav shechalbo Nochri. The rabbi said you cannot drink from milk that was milked. Is there an official term for milking? I don't know. I guess milking, right? That's the verb, right? So you cannot drink from milk that was milked by a non-Jew. Shema, why not? Shema irev bechalav atahor chalav tameh. We are worried, says the Gemara, that the non-Jew mixed tameh, impure milk, with the kosher milk. Non-kosher milk with the kosher milk. Even though the possibility for that is very small. Because normally most people just drink kosher milk from a cow. We even mentioned that there's a big difference between kosher milk and non-kosher milk. That the color of kosher milk is white, and the color of non-kosher milk is yellow. If the milk is white and you don't even taste a difference, according to Torah, even if the goy mixed a little bit of non-kosher milk, according to Torah, if you don't taste the non-kosher milk, it's fine. But that's only according to the Torah. Nevertheless, the rabbis were very strict. Ve'asru chalav nochri, and they prohibited non-kosher milk. Shema ireh bo halav tameh, lest someone, a non-Jew, mixed in non-kosher milk. Lo zu bilvad, not only this, ela afilu asa Yisrael gvina mechalav nochri, even if a Jew made cheese with non-kosher milk, velichora muchach miseh she'achalav tahor, and then it came about that they realized that this was kosher milk, sheken chalav be'emat mea eno mitkaben. Why? How do I know that? Because like we said before, you can't make cheese from non-kosher milk. So it has to be kosher milk. Nevertheless, asru chachamim et hagvina. The rabbis prohibited this cheese. Mechashash, from worry, shema chalav tameh shelo yitkaben notar kelachluchit begumot hagvina becharitzeha. Because lest maybe even they did put in a little bit of chalav tameh, and that moisture of the non-kosher milk is found in the gumot, in the little holes or the slits of the cheese remaining in there. Kefi anireh, it seems. החמירו חכמים בחשש איסור זה מעבר למקובל בשאר איסור אכילה מפני המגמה הכללית להרחיק את ישראל מאכלי הגויים. The main reason why we are prohibited from drinking non-kosher milk is the same reason why we will see in future classes there's this concept of bishul akum and pat akum, which is not to mingle with the goyim and to distance ourselves from the foods of the goyim, and this is why the Chachamim did this. On a side point, Rav Moshe Feinstein was asked a question whether or not if a chiloni, a non-religious, non-observant Jew, was to milk a cow, is that good enough? Can I drink from that? Can I drink from that milk? And he answers yes. A person is allowed to drink from a milk as long as the person is Jewish. It doesn't matter if he is observant or not observant. That milk is kosher. However, כאשר ישראל מפקח את הגוי שלא יראה בחלב טהור חלב טמא, if the Jew inspects the non-Jew, meaning he's mashgiach, he's making sure that the non-Jew is not mixing any non-kosher milk, החלב kasher, then the chalav is kosher, even though the non-Jew is the one milking. אם ידוע בוודאות שאין לגוי בהמה טמאה, you know for sure that this goy does not have any non-kosher animal. די בכך שישראל ישגיח שהגוי לא יביא באמצע חליבה חלב ממקום אחר. It's perfectly fine that the Jew ensures that this goy is not bringing milk from outside. And let's say the goy does have a female pig or a female horse. The Jew has to be mashgiach, and he has to make sure and watch him that he's milking the cow, the kosher animal, and not mixing. Now, the Jew doesn't need to inspect and watch the entire milking process. That could take quite a long time. As long as the non-Jew knows that the Jew is watching him, and whenever he wants, the Jew can look and watch. Just by peeking, he can watch him. Or he can walk in and out. In that case, it's all fine. If there's a little worry that maybe in the basin where he collects the milk, there might be some pig milk or some horse milk in that basin from leftover from where he went to milk earlier, then that's the Jew's responsibility. The mashgiach has to make sure that keli is cleaned well before using it for kosher milk. Okay, so we do know that this is not a gimmick. Halav Yisrael is not a gimmick. This was something that was instituted by the Chachamim, is brought from the Gemara and the Mishnah, okay? But, as we know, a lot of us here and listening don't eat Halav Yisrael. So where does that come from? So he continues. Shalosh shitot nehemru behekef ha'isur. There are three opinions when it comes to the prohibition of Halav Yisrael. Leshita Rishona, according to the first opinion, Rak ka'asher yesh chashash metziuti. Only when there is a realistic concern. Shehagoy ye'erav chalav tameh b'chalav tahor. That the goy will mix. You are really concerned that the goy will mix non-kosher with kosher. Hachalav shenechlav al yedei hagoy asur. That's when it's asur. Aval b'makom she'em megadlim behema temea. If you are in a place where they don't even raise non-kosher animals, or non-kosher milk is super expensive, we are not worried that the goy is going to mix non-kosher milk with milk. And therefore a Jew would be allowed to drink from milk that was milked by a goy. This is the Rashbash, the Pri Chadash, the Shpetz. V'chen nahagu berov kehilot Tzafon Africa v'Teman. And this is the custom of many in Tzafon Africa, North African Jews, such as Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, as well many Temanim. And there's others as well. So this is the first way of looking at the Isur. Leshita Shniya, a little bit more strict, the second way of looking at it. Af b'makom she'en chashash metziuti. Even though there's not a realistic concern, as long as there's a little bit of a concern, even if it's a very slim chance, a Jew is not allowed to drink that milk. Because it could be they brought a female pig or a female horse from this barn to your barn. Maybe the goy felt that there was an advantage, whether to save some time, or to make the milk taste better. Because of that, even for that smaller chance, that maybe the goy, to save time or to make it taste better, would do something like that, according to this opinion, you can never drink milk that was milked by a goy. Then hachalav kasher. And only if there's absolutely no chance, no probability that the goy would do something like that, that's when it's allowed. This was done by many of the keilot communities around Eretz Yisrael and as well in Germany. And here he brings down the Chida, who was a Sfaradi. He held like this, Bet Meir and the Chochmat Adam. L'shita shlishit, the third way of looking at the prohibition. This is the most strict out of the three. Gam keshe'en shum chashash she'agoy ye'erav chalav tameh b'tahor. Even if there's absolutely no chance in the world that this goy mixed non-kosher milk, hachalav shenechlav yedei hagoy asur, not allowed. Why? Mipnei she'al smach hachashash shema goy ye'erav chalav tameh b'tahor, chachamu gazu b'minyan. Haynu be'achlata gemura. Just from the fact that it is possible, the rabbis made an enactment, and that enactment is done, is made, Isur Gamula Chalav Goyim. It is a full-out prohibition that since there's substance to it, therefore it is Asur Gam Keshe'en Shum Chashash Me'orah Bo Chalav Tameh. This is the third most strict opinion. So we went through three ways of looking at this prohibition. What becomes a very, what's the word I'm looking for? relevant matter is the time, the age of the world that we live in today with manufacturing, where not only do you have manufacturing, but you also have companies that produce on very large scale and that are constantly being watched by inspectors, non-Jewish inspectors, government inspectors, and this is what leads to now what becomes arguably one of the most famous psaks of at least one of the most recent poskim, Rav Moshe Feinstein, as he explains now. Rabim Sovrim, many hold, not just Rav Moshe, שהואיל ובפועל אין חשש שהחברות הגדולות לשיווק חלב ומוצריו ירבו בחלב שלהם חלב טמא. Since there is no chance that the big companies now will mix non-kosher milk with kosher milk. מפני שאין חולבים עבורם בהמות טמאות כלל. Guess you know why? Because nobody milks non-kosher animals today. It just doesn't happen. וגם מחירו של החלב הטמא גבוה לאין ארוך מחלב טהור. And you know what the price is if you want non-kosher milk? It's skyrocketed. It's so much more expensive than that of kosher milk, or I guess milk from a cow. וגם אין תועלת בעירובו בחלב הטהור. And there's no advantage whatsoever to milk horse's milk with cow's milk. לדעת רוב הפוסקים, according to most poskim, which is what we're going to say now is the first and second way of looking at it. En ala chalav shelahen isur chalav nochrim. We don't have the isur, the prohibition of milk of a non-Jew. Hosif Rav Moshe Feinstein. Rav Moshe Feinstein adds in his responsa, shegam lefi hashita machmira. Even according to the most strict, the third way of looking at the prohibition, which we said that you always have to keep that. Even according to them, אפשר להקל, you could be lenient here. במוצרי חלב שחברות אמינות ומוכחות במדינות המתוקנות, שמצילות שהחלב מוצריו שהן משווקות הוא חלב שבהמות טהורות. He said, the fact that we have so many big companies, Nielsen, Seal Test, I don't know what other ones there are in the States, and then in Canada, Nielsen, Seal Test, alright? We have so many big companies that produce on such a large scale, and are watched, and are heavily guarded to make sure that milk comes from a cow. Even according to the most strict opinion, those that held to the most strict, they can be mekil. Because if they were to cheat, if Seal Test were to decide one day, let's just sneak in a little bit of pig milk into our everyday milk bags here in Canada, or our gallons that you buy at Circle K. If they decided that they were going to cheat, hen alulot likanes, they would be fined millions upon millions of dollars. Lo pachot chamur, and worse, amun hatzorchanim, the consumers, b'motzrein alul lipaga, they're going to lose confidence. Their business will tank. The moment you find out that a product that you thought was naturally milk is no longer milk from a cow, who's going to buy that milk anymore? Instantly, that stock will plummet. And how many consumers will start buying? It turns out שהפיקוח הכללי במדינות אלו נחשב כפיקוח של ישראל. Look at the chidush he's saying, Rav Moshe. The inspection of the government becomes like a Jewish person being mashgiach. They become like a Jewish mashgiach. שמשגיח שלא ירבו חלב טמא בתוך החלב טהור. That they're making sure that there's no non-kosher horse milk entering the cow milk. וממילא לכל השלטות החלב שלהם מותר. According to all those three opinions now, the chalav is kosher, the milk is kosher. לפיכך, מתוך התחשבות וקושי להציג חלב ישראל בחוץ לארץ, because of some of the difficulty, it is not so. You can argue it's not so difficult anymore because there is chalav Israel pretty much readily available in many supermarkets. But the fact that it is not as available as in Eretz Yisrael, let's say, hitir harav Feinstein בארצות הברית, Rav Feinstein allowed in ארצות הברית לסמוך על אמינות החברות המפוקחות, to rely on these agencies. And that is what the OU actually relies on, this psak of Rav Moshe Feinstein. So those are one group of Jews. And this is where you see people that will drink regular milk and eat things that are not Halav Yisrael. That's where they get this from. There is still a group of Jews that will only eat and drink Halav Yisrael. Mineged, yesh machmirim. On the other hand, we have people who are strict. Mishne ta'amim mikarim. For two reasons why they make sure to only eat and drink Halav Yisrael. Aleph, ulai hapikuach hamemshati eno meudak dio. Maybe the general inspection of the government is not good enough. Vegam im hu meudak, and even if it is good enough, shema yimnadu mikach la'akel b'mkomot she'enam mefukarim karaui. Maybe they're just not watching all the time, and they're just going to be lenient in their inspection. Bet, the second reason, according to that third reason, the third way of looking at the prohibition, that the isur of chalav, of non-kosher milk, is something of substance, of quantity, then even if the inspection is good, who cares? It's still not a Jewish person watching it. That the rabbis, that was the only condition the rabbis allowed it, that a Jew had to watch it. Governments are not Jews. Inspection agencies are not Jews. And that's why it's asur. Final law, the main thing is you can follow the opinion of those that are lenient. But what he refers to as holy Jews, they have the custom to be more strict when it's not difficult. As we'll see later on in Halacha Vav. Kayom, today, today, the milk is monitored by a lot of electronic devices. Right? There's cameras. He said, don't think for one moment that the regular seal test and Nielsen milk that you buy in a superstore is not kasher lemehadrin. It is kasher lemehadrin because of the supervision, because of the cameras, because of everything goes through a plant that is heavily inspected. Don't think in any way that it is less kosher than something that is Halav Yisrael. He does call people that want to keep Halav Yisrael, even though it's difficult, Kedoshim, they're Chazaku Baruch, Tavo Alem Bracha, no question, but that does not mean that the regular milk that is not Halav Yisrael is not kosher. What he does move on now to talk about is Avkat Halav, which is milk powder, which is going to lead us into what we call chocolates. Alright? Chocolates. So we got a few minutes left. Machloket nosefet hitorera al avkat halav. Milk powder. We've removed all the moisture so that it remains powder. We use milk powder to create chocolate. Okay, without the actual volume, that's how we insert flavors. Sometimes, eventually, we add water to it, and through that it turns into regular milk. All nutritional components are present. Ladat roba poskim, according to most halachic authorities. Ho'il ubaru lanu she'avkat ha'chalav ne'asta michalav tahor. Since it is very clear that any milk powder comes from kosher animals and kosher milk. According to the first two out of the three, milk powder is good. בנוסף לכך, and not only that, במדינות מתוקנות שיש בהן פיקוח על החברות שלא ירימו ויכניסו חלב טמא בחלב הפרה שממנו מבקים אבקת חלב. If you live in countries like Canada and the United States where there's a lot of inspection agencies that, like we said, watch the milk, then אפשר להחשיב את הפיקוח הממשלתי והציבורי כפיקוח ישראל. Like we said, you can consider that inspection like a Jew is inspecting. And therefore, even according to the third most strict opinion, your milk powder would be kosher. Even those people that are so strict when it comes to the actual milk, when it comes to milk powder, you need to be mekil. You need to be lenient. The rabbis only prohibited milk that comes out of an animal. Not from a new product that comes from the milk. The prohibition is only milk, not the milk powder. Now the rabbis did need to add another element of the prohibition to cheese, which we said we're going to talk about next week. And without that, the gvina would be kosher. We don't need an extra gzeira over here. And therefore, the fact that we don't have an extra gzeira, it must mean that the milk powder is kosher on its own. And those people that are very strict not to drink any chalav, unless it's Halav Yisrael, even if it comes from heavily inspected agencies. Because they're saying milk powder is really the same as milk. I'm just removed all the liquids from it. There's no more moisture, but technically it's milk. And they hold that the gzera, the enactment falls on this this enactment on this chalav. Nevertheless, ulam afkat chalav nitan laasot gam mechalav tameh u'memela gzerat chalav chala aleh. All right, so for them, they want to hold like that. That's up to them. But lemaaseh, he says there's really no need to be mekil on powdered milk. One last halacha, and then we'll conclude our shiur. We're already just past the 30-minute mark. V'machloket ha'ikronit al chalav ve'afkat chalav mechevot aminot mukachot halacha kedat mekilim. We already said that the halacha is like those that are lenient. Mipnei shezvaratam nir'et v'dat rov poskim harishonim ha'ochlim la'akel, because most people are mekil. And not only that, haklal hu, the rule is b'machloket b'divrei chachamim halacha kedat mekil. That's a general rule that whenever you have a rabbinical argument or a rabbinical doubt, in this case, this is a rabbinical enactment, and now you have reason to believe that it could be allowed or not allowed. Whenever it's davar from the chachamim, from the rabbis, we act more leniently. The halacha is le'akel. If it's something from the Torah, then we would act more strictly. Legabe avkat chalav, with regards to milk powder, omedet hamatilim od yoter mervechet. Those that are mekil, you have more of a reason. Sheken gam mevin hamachminim bechalav nochli, yesh memakilim beavkat chalav. Lefichach, nitan lehanik kashrut regila lemotzrei chalav, sheyadua shelo meora bahem chalav tamem, lamrot shenechlevu belo pikuach Yisrael. He says you are allowed to give hashgacha to a non-Jewish milk company, even knowing that they did not incorporate non-kosher milk, even though technically there was no Jew watching it. And if you go to the supermarket and you take a bag of Nielsen milk and seal test milk, you will turn around and you will see a COR and you will see an MK. You will see hashgacha on that milk, even though it is not it's not Halav Yisrael, because the Maaseh it's kosher. Omram, however, kashrut mehadrin yesh la'anik rak lechalav shenechlad koch Yisrael aydei mashkiach o matzemot. But the mehadrin hashgacha, which would be a more advanced halacha in Eretz Yisrael, would only give that the hashgacha if there are cameras watching the process and there's a heavily inspected agency. So COR is actually considered a very high level hashgacha, and they do give hashgacha on this milk on seal test and Nielsen. Why? Because it is running through a plant, and there are government inspections, and there are cameras, and everything is electronic, and there are no way they're going to sneak in any milk that is not kosher. But again, Yisrael kedoshim, the holy Jews, kozman shechmera ena krucha ba'aliyot gvohot, noagim ladek yishar kol haposkim, lachen mekol ha'echsherim shel rabbanim beYisrael mekubal la'adel shelo tzorech halav nochlim. Okay, fine. Kashrut mehadrin matzicha kpada al od shte sugyot. To have a higher level of kashrut, you need another two things. Harishona, what we learned, la'itim veterinarim ne'elasim lebatzei nituchim be'ememot. Sometimes veterinarians would perform little operations, not little, sometimes they're bigger operations on animals. Kenituach kesari, like a cesarean, lebe'ema shemaksheh leimlit, it's hard for them to give birth. Venikuv hakeretz lo'tzaat gazim mesukanim. And sometimes there's some dangerous gases in the animal that need to be released. So they would actually puncture the animal. I've seen videos about this, right? They would actually puncture the animal to release those gases. But yes, and some people say, Shilachar nituchim alalu henes vot revot. Oh, well, once you're puncturing the animal, maybe you're making the animal a trefa, and therefore that animal wouldn't be good to take milk from. However, Omnam Lamanu, we learned earlier, Sheikal halacha kedat mekilim. The halacha is like the mekilim who say hasovrim shenituchim elu ena matrifim mitaparot. These many surgeries do not make the cows a trefa, and therefore the cow remains kasher to be milked from. So, just to summarize what we've said today, it is not a gimmick. There was indeed a takana by the Chachamim to avoid mingling with the non-Jews. This was created in the times of the Mishnayot and lasted for many, many years. And until recent development of manufacturing and the advancement of manufacturing, where milk goes through a process which is heavily inspected, the idea of Halav Yisrael was something. And in the olden days, when they had literally people owned farms and barns and had their own cows, you had to make sure that whatever milk you were drinking needed to be milked by a Jew. And if it was milked by a non-Jew, there had to be a Jew there watching for that milk to be kosher. Nowadays, where we have milk in such bulk at the grocery stores that is made with millions of gallons and liters of, probably per minute being manufactured in the plants. That is not required because of the increased and over-the-top supervision that we have. So those that do eat Halav Yisrael, even though it might be a little bit more difficult, a lot more expensive, you are blessed. Hazaku Baruch. Kol hakavod to you. But those people that don't eat Halav Yisrael, don't drink Halav Yisrael, because of the reasons that we just stated, don't think for one moment that you are doing anything wrong. Okay? And if anyone was to tell you that you're doing something wrong, you tell them that they are wrong. Okay? You are still drinking milk that is 100% kasher. Okay, and given all the inspections that we have, it is 100% kasher. It's kasher lamehadrin as well. Okay, so that will conclude tonight's shiur. And B'ezrat Hashem, next week we will continue to the second part of this topic, which is cheeses and butter. And butter is always a very big topic that people ask about. So we'll look at that B'ezrat Hashem next week. Thank you for joining, everybody.